Hi everyone, let's consolidate what we have learned in these three topics, okay, or subtopics. So nutrients, the fates of glucose, and digestion in man. Okay, because there are many links between these topics, so I hope that this video will help you guys out. Now I've arranged things in such a way that the top is actually the class of nutrients. So we have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and all the larger molecules are at the top. Okay, so you can see large molecules such as cellulose, starch, glycogen, protein, and fat, they are on the top. And as we move further down, it gets smaller and smaller. So for example, disaccharides, followed by glucose, which is the smallest molecule. Then we have polypeptides and amino acids, smaller fat droplets, and then glycerol and fatty acids. Okay, so that's how we arrange this entire diagram over here. Okay, so let's start off. Cellulose and starch. Now these two things are actually found in plants, and glycogen is actually found in animals. Humans like us, right, we don't store starch, but we store glycogen as a form of glucose in our bodies. Okay, so normally we try to store larger things, which is why we store glycogen rather than glucose. So what happens is that, how do we obtain our food from plants or other animals? Okay, we undergo digestion. So from starch, if we eat a potato, it will be digested into maltose by amylase. Okay, so all these red arrows will be digestion. And from maltose to glucose, it is actually maltase. After it has been digested into a small enough molecule, it can actually diffuse across my epithelial cell in the small intestine and it's absorbed, right? But if I want to store glucose in my body, I will then convert it to the animal form of storage, which is glycogen. Alright, so plants, they store starch, but animals, we store glycogen. Okay, and this is actually occurring in the liver or muscles, right, under the influence of insulin that is released from the pancreas. Okay, so digest, after I convert to my own storage form. What about proteins? Proteins actually digested into polypeptides by pepsin in the stomach or trypsin in the intestines. Okay, and after that, polypeptides, because they are peptide bonds, they are digested by peptidases. Okay, so peptidases will digest polypeptides into amino acids. And now amino acids, they are small enough to be absorbed in the small intestine. And after that, I can use it to form proteins. And why would I need to do that? Because proteins can be used to make important things like enzymes and hormones. And more importantly, they are always for growth and repair of cells, or the synthesis of new protoplasm. That means I want to grow new cells. That's what I have protein for. Okay, while glycogen is the storage form of glucose. Okay, so now going back to digestion, fats, they are actually emulsified by bile into smaller fat droplets. So you see, it is still intact. No chemical digestion has occurred. Okay, but only when I encounter lipase, okay, either intestinal lipase or pancreatic lipase, it is digested into glycerol and fatty acids. And now this is small enough to be absorbed into the epithelial cells, okay, where they recombine to form fat globules and is transported in the lacteal. Okay, and once we are there, right, what happens is that if there is too much, we can store it as fat. And where is it stored? It is stored as adipose tissue, either under the skin or as shock absorbers around our body. Okay, and this can fat is also used to make new cells, particularly the cell membrane. So that is the functions of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that is great for humans and animals, but what about plants? Plants, they don't consume, animals, right? Or they don't consume themselves for nutrition. Where do they actually get their nutrients from? Only from one very special process called photosynthesis. Okay, so if we recap, photosynthesis is actually carbon dioxide plus water. In the presence of light, it will give us a glucose molecule and oxygen. Okay, of course, this is not balanced. You can balance it yourself. And the main function of glucose, we must know, is it is used for cellular respiration. So whether or not you're an animal or a plant, you need glucose for cellular respiration. That is the function of glucose. Now, the amazing thing is, from this one particular molecule that plants make, plants can convert it to many, many other things. So for example, they can convert it to sucrose, and this is used to be transported in the phloem. So whenever plants want to transport glucose around, they have to convert it to sucrose first, and sucrose is the form in which it is transported around the rest of the plant through the phloem vessel. Okay, and of course it can make bigger molecules such as cellulose, which is a supporting structure because it is part of the cell wall, or it can be used to store in plants as starch, right? So this is the storage. Now, plants also need proteins and plants also need fats. So from glucose, they can actually make an amino acid. And how they do that is, if we compare glucose, I have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. If I compare it to an amino acid, right, you will know that that one element that is missing is actually nitrogen. So where do plants actually get nitrogen from? They actually get it from nitrates in the soil. So for example, fertilizers, they contain a lot of nitrogen. So combining glucose with nitrogen can give me amino acids, which the plant can then use to also make proteins. Because they need to grow and repair, they also have enzymes and hormones. Now, apart from that, they also need to use glucose to actually make fat. Okay? And this is actually found in oil. So for example, peanut oil, corn oil, or in fatty foods such as nuts. So if you look at this overall diagram, you'll realize that animals normally, we will break down macromolecules into smaller ones so that it can be digested into the small intestine. Then after that, we build it back up again to form whatever that we need. But for plants, they start off with glucose because that's the only thing they can make from photosynthesis. But this glucose molecule is extremely versatile. From it, plants can make sucrose, it can make cellulose, can make starch, amino acids, glycerol, fatty acids, and fat. Okay, so I hope that, with this overall picture, you have a better understanding of how all of these concepts are being linked together.